All right, this is the part of the lecture that deals with multicultural organizing. The chapter, the article was posted on our website, and I'm just going to show you where it is. If this is our Blackboard site, the readings are here, the tab on the left, and now we're on Multicultural Organizing, a Strategy for Change. And that's something that you want to download. It's 961 blah blah blah, and take a look at. We'll be talking about that. And then I've posted some notes under lectures. I've got the multicultural organizing notes, so that's what I'm going to refer to right now. So the multicultural community organizing, a strategy for change. I want to talk about this article, and I would like you to take a look at the notes. It might be hard to read along with me. This is an article that is directed at students and teachers in the field of social work. As indicated in my first lecture, the social work as it's a field emerged from an idea about community change in which the practitioner, the social worker, was an agent of community change. An agent of community empowerment and advocacy. So this article is really wonderful reading for us because we're a very diverse group with different ideas of social justice and different styles of expressing ourselves and doing things that come out of our own experience. We'll also be interacting with many student clubs, organizations, departments, and artists, so it's helpful for us to think about how to promote consensus, respect, and even to embrace conflict so we can build consensus. The main argument in this article is that social workers can expect to work increasingly in multicultural environments as inequality expands and people of color particularly impacted, but working class people in general. And it's vital to have a thoughtful anti-racist perspective to be an effective organizer. Oops. Sorry about that. Here. Recognizing and building from community strength means listening, learning, and facilitating dialogue. So here I'm starting to go into some of the main highlights of this article. And I really urge you to read it. I'm just going to turn to that article for a moment. It's only 9 pages. And I would say it's very well written. It's easy to read. And it's full of gems of, thoughtfulness and really some great ideas about working in a multicultural environment and how people from the inside as well as people from the outside of communities can work together, the kinds of challenges that people will face. And if you're working in a coalition, you might be an insider in one community and an outsider in the other. So we're all insiders and outsiders at the same time. So how do we understand one another? How do we deal with the conflict that's going to most likely come up as we try to make decisions? And so here's some highlights I pointed out. But do read this article because it's great. Conflict among groups grows out of historical segregation and socioeconomic conditions. Being able to facilitate conflict without feeling threatened is an important skill. Regarding building consensus, the authors, this is a multiple author article, addressing conflict directly requires active listening and consensus building skills and involves taking various views of the situation from all involved in the conflict and then reaching a consensus about how to proceed. And of course the authors have talked about how, and I explain this in my notes. These are just some highlights here. In my notes, I go into a little bit more depth about how important it is to respect how folks organize, that people of color have always worked on their own to improve conditions in their own communities. Again, there's just a lot of thoughts here. So about the kinds of things that you want to value your own cultural heritage and have respect for others and interests in others' cultural heritage. Being aware, not only, let's say, of food traditions, but also history and values, as well as other religious and cultural traditions of different groups, and being willing to learn. So please take a look at this article. I'm going to return to the idea of conflict and consensus, because I think that's critical for us. As I noted, we want to have active listening and consensus building skills. My dog is building my listening skills with her bouncing the ball in the background. All right, reaching a consensus often means being open to differing conflict styles and hearing the content of the message being presented rather than reacting only to the feelings with which they are presented. So people might express themselves in different ways. If you're a facilitator and you're trying to build consensus, you don't want to react defensively. So you want to be open to different styles for handling conflicts. Now, conflict avoidance techniques may be valued for their ability to offset the attack, but whereas confrontation approaches may be valued for their ability to focus immediate attention on the conflict. These are really interesting thoughts. Please take a look at this article, and I hope that we have a chance to talk about it one-on-one or when we are together. Now I'm going to finally turn to the popular education readings, and I'm just going to touch on them. Again, my dog is growling in the background, and you're probably thinking, when is she going to stop talking? But I want to point out some of these great readings in popular education, because popular education is a terrific way to organize, to run meetings, or to at least have some part of them in meetings, and then also to have in the fair as different ways of interacting with all of the guests that we're going to have in our own communities. So take a look at the folder that has to do with popular education, and what's in the popular education folder. So pardon me while I find my notes here. Let's look at the spiral model of organizing, and so I have, that's right here, the spiral JPEG. And this is to show you the rubric, the patterns that people who do popular education use. So you want to start with the experience of the participants. You ask people, well, how did you experience the problem of discrimination in the classroom, or the fee hikes that you have had to deal with over the last few years if you're talking to students. Then you look for patterns. When the third person says, I had to take out more loans, or I had to take a second job. Now you can, as a facilitator, add new theory and information, and deal with the idea that student debt has risen a great deal, and people have dropped out of school in record numbers. So you're adding that to a conversation. You go ahead and move to 4, which is practicing skills, strategizing, and planning for action. Together, thinking about, well, what can people do about it? Brainstorming, and coming up with building a consensus around what kind of tactics and strategy can you use to bring attention, for example, to student debt, to write articles, to demonstrate, etc. And that's when you, 5, apply that in action and see what works, what doesn't, learn from your mistakes, and that's where the reflection component comes in. So this is what we call the spiral method of organizing. And you can read more about it. There's some online materials that you can read in more depth, but this is just a little hint of how you use popular education in a meeting or in a group. I also am touching on the pedagogy of the oppressed, Paulo Freire and Miles Horton. So the article here, Horton Freire, Chapter 1, this is from a book that Miles Horton and Paulo Freire wrote together, which is brings Miles Horton, who is an American educator and really an activist who helped found the Highlander School in Tennessee, together with Paulo Freire, a scholar, a politician, a grassroots organizer, who came up with who wrote the pedagogy of the oppressed. And this is the first chapter of the introduction of a book that talks about how these two got together and shared their ideas and worked together on a number of different campaigns. The pedagogy of the oppressed, I've uploaded a chapter from the pedagogy of the oppressed here, and that's Paulo Freire. It's a rich text file. So you can look online at some of these readings, and you can Google pedagogy of the oppressed. But here you can look at a discussion of Paulo Freire and his chapter. So, one of the most important ideas that Paulo Freire had to offer, and that Miles Horton agreed with and applied in the United States, is the idea that the idea that working class people and the oppressed have answers, and it's up to folks who have experience to try to figure out, as in the spiral method of organizing, how to sort through their experience and come up with analyzing it and figure out ways to make a change, create social change. People aren't going to find out answers by having someone tell them what to do or give them answers. It's really about creating a dialogue. And this is what Paulo Freire is known for in terms of his challenging the banking method of teaching, in which a teacher would pour ideas into the student who would be an empty vessel. That's a bankrupt way of looking at how people learn and become knowledgeable, and that instead it's really about dialogue and about people being able to analyze their own experience and then use theory and other people's experience to find answers for themselves. So we will have another chance to talk about Paulo Freire and the pedagogy of the oppressed, as well as Miles Horton, but I wanted to show you where some of those materials could be found. Another file I've uploaded for you is this African Tree of Knowledge, and this is a activity in which a workshop was planned that got people thinking about different parts of organizing, and they strategized, they brainstormed, and then they wrote their ideas on these pieces of paper. One group that talked about the first part of organizing wrote on orange. People who talked about mobilizing came up with another, were given another color to write their ideas on, and so on and so forth. And then in the end, people came up and they pasted their ideas on a large board and came up with this tree of knowledge. And it shows you how popular education is more than the sum of its parts. It brings people together, and all of their ideas form this beautiful vision that draws from everybody's ideas. So I take a look at that. This is something that you might find interesting to use, and that we might be able to apply for the fair as well. Another file I brought out for you is called Ready for Action, about popular theater. And we'll be talking about Augusto Boal, who used Paulo Freire's ideas about popular education for the theater. And this is quite a long Ready for Action file, but if you're interested in using popular theater and theater of the oppressed for the fair or for your other organizing activities, this is something that can really help you. And we'll, again, have more of a chance to talk about what this is about. The last one is getting the community in the act. And once again, this is all kinds of different ways that you can use popular education, 72 participatory activities that we could draw from to get people involved and do some things that are fun. And so we have an interactive fair. And even in our planning, we can try to do some interactive kinds of brainstorming and idea sharing. So one more example of using popular education, which we will be talking about some more. So take a look at these, and please answer the question on the discussion board by Sunday night. How can you use multicultural organizing and popular education methods to help prepare you to organize the labor fair? Thank you.